Welcome back to the crash course, how to reduce disruptions without yelling, begging, or bribing. So far, we've covered 3 mistakes. The first is choosing between being kind and firm. The second is assuming good procedures will just happen. And the third is not having a classroom management plan. Hopefully, you've learned a lot from those 3 common mistakes. But we don't want to stop there. Now we want to talk about what is the process? What are the steps that you need to reduce disruptions, restore order, and create that smooth running classroom? We want you to get to a point where you are not frustrated by student misbehavior and you can actually enjoy teaching again. Now, the process that I'm about to teach you, I want to let you know, comes from our brand new Classroom Management 101 course. In Classroom Management 101, we help teachers implement a classroom management plan that works so they can stop being frustrated by student misbehavior and actually enjoy teaching again. And I'm going to share with you the process that we teach in Classroom Management 101 and also the process that you can use to reduce disruptions, restore order, and create a smooth running class. It is called the Smooth Running Classroom Process. There are 4 steps in it: plan, practice, adjust, and restart. Let me teach you this process. So step 1 is to create a plan. Create a good classroom management plan that works. Now, we talked about this a little bit in the last video, but I want to share with you an analogy that is kind of helpful because I've had people come to me and say, I know a lot of teachers that don't need a plan. They don't need one. And I use the analogy of a master chef versus a beginning cook. Do you think that a master chef needs a recipe? No. They do not need a recipe, right? Because they know exactly what they're doing. They have so much skills, so much expertise. They know what spices and herbs go with what meats and cheeses. They know exactly what's going to work and they're able to experiment, right? But a beginning cook is in a different situation. A beginning cook, a recipe is extremely, extremely helpful. So, as beginners or as someone that's kind of struggling with classroom management, a plan is immensely helpful because we don't want to find ourselves here, right? So when we create a classroom management plan, it has 5 sections, and I talked to you about them briefly last time. I want to explain them a little bit more here. So the first piece of our classroom management plan is to come up with procedures. So it's to do what we talked about in the mistake number 2 and to think through what areas of my classroom are chaotic and don't have good procedures and come up with better procedures. So to make sure everything that we do is done in an orderly way. Step 2 is expectations. And this one is really eye-opening because sometimes we are actually not very clear in our mind of what we expect, right? I know this totally happened to me my first year. Students put their head down on their desk and I thought, is that okay? I don't know if that's okay. I had not thought through what I expected of my students. That happened over and over with all kinds of small issues, but I didn't know if that was okay or not. I hadn't thought it through. So it's really important in your mind. Different teachers are going to set those lines in different spots, and you can choose that. But you do need to be clear, where is the line? What am I going to expect from my students? Then we want to think about responses to misbehavior. In other words, what exactly am I going to do or say when students, and then you want to do that for every single common misbehavior that you come across, right? Talking, blurting, wandering around the class, swearing, being rude to a classmate, not doing their homework, and the list can go on and on. You want to write out what are all these areas that, that commonly come up. And then just plan, what am I going to say? What am I going to do for each of them? And we in Classroom Management 101, we walk our students through this step by step. Logical consequences are another important part of your plan. And I'm not going to spend, we have a whole thing in Classroom Management 101 that talks about why this is important, even though it's somewhat out of vogue right now. But the reality is that logical consequences are an important piece of your classroom management plan. So you do want to have some consequences available to use as they make sense. And part of your responses is thinking about when is a consequence part of the response and when isn't it? And you can kind of plan that ahead of time. And then finally, positive reinforcement. We want to make sure we're encouraging our students. We're pointing out when they're doing things well. We might even want to have some type of reward system, or just some, you can either have a reward system, or you can just have, kind of more spontaneous rewards that you give out. But we definitely want to be encouraging our students in a positive way as well. Now, imagine that you have all of this written out, all your procedures, crystal clear, expectations. You know exactly where the line is. You have a pre-planned response for every common classroom situation, and also for what to do when you're just surprised by something. You have logical consequences ready if needed, and you have a plan in place to positively encourage your students. Imagine how much clarity that will give you. And that's why I want you to create a plan. Yes, it does take some time, but it doesn't have to take forever. And it is so, so worth it. Margaret said having a plan made such a difference. She said she had a very challenging class. Margaret's one of the teachers that we've worked with. She said, I never felt in control, and I got discouraged, and I was even wondering if I was supposed to be a teacher. But she says, I feel now that I have definite plans and strategies to turn to, and it has made all the difference. Bridget's story is one of my favorites. She said she always struggled with classroom management, and that she was crying all the time and honestly ready to walk out. Her students were taking advantage of her lack of confidence, just like we were talking about. They would act out all the time. But after getting a plan and implementing it, she said, I have so much more confidence in myself and my classroom management. We practice, we correct, we're being consistent with our consequences and procedures. And she says, I feel like I have my students wrapped around my finger now, and I'm actually enjoying teaching, which is just tremendous. So step 1 is to create a written plan. Step 2 is to practice. Put your plan into action and practice responding consistently. So once your plan is ready, step 1, step 2, you have to implement it. And it depends on when you're implementing it. Implementing it in the beginning of the year is relatively easy. All you got to do is teach your procedures using that 4-step process, and then just be consistent with your responses. That's it. It's nice and easy. In the middle of the school year, though, it's a little bit trickier because you have a Titanic situation. Meaning you have a ship that is going one direction, and it is not going to turn on a dime. It will turn slowly, okay? So I just want to let you know, don't be discouraged by that if you're in the middle of a school year. Just recognize my ship is going to turn slowly. I'm not going to be discouraged by that. I'm going to expect it, and I'm just going to work to turn it, and it will turn. It's just going to take a little time. But we can actually increase how quickly that ship turns by doing a classroom shakeup. And we teach this in detail in Classroom Management 101, but the idea is that you do something tangible to get your students' attention so that they're like, okay, something's going on. It forces a little bit of a reset. So for example, you might say, you might shut the door to your classroom and not let anyone in. And they come to you and say, why can't we go into the classroom? And you say, well, we need to talk. Or they come in and there's no chairs in the classroom. They don't know why there's no chairs in the classroom. So you're just doing something interesting to get their attention, to force a little bit of a reset. As I said, we go into this in a lot more detail in Classroom Management 101. But yeah, the idea is to just use actions to do something to get their attention. The second step is to teach your new procedures and expectations. So once you got their attention, then you say, okay, this is why we're doing this, because what we've been doing hasn't been working. This is what we're going to do instead. And you teach them, this is the new expectation. This is the new procedure. Use the 4-step process if you're teaching a new procedure. From there on, you practice responding consistently according to your plan, right? So I have my plan. I'm going to practice responding consistently. And I do say practice because you won't be perfect. You won't always be consistent. But if you practice, if you keep working at being consistent, you're going to get better and better and better. And as you start to respond more and more consistently, your students are the line's going to become clear, and they're going to start to respect those new boundaries. Even more importantly, though, your skills and your confidence are starting to improve. And that is huge, which I'll share more about that in the next video. BECCA says when she started implementing a plan, her classroom was completely transformed. In 4 weeks, students were more respectful and they started taking responsibility. Behavior issues decreased, students were more engaged and productive, and she was actually able to teach more because she wasn't dealing with all the problems. It was an amazing turnaround. Micah had a similar situation. Before, he felt like he was always struggling to maintain control, and there were like a few students who would drive everyone crazy, and reining things back in was a struggle. He says, now though, I'm being more consistent. And I love how he says, it's still a work in progress, right? So it's not going to be there right immediately, but it's so much more manageable. He says, I don't feel like I'm drowning anymore. We're making great progress. So in this video, we covered steps 1 and 2 of the plan. We talked about how to create a plan and then put it into practice. The next video, I'm going to teach you the last 2 steps to reduce disruptions, restore order, and create a smooth running class. And I do want to let you know, if you're saying, Linda, this sounds great, but I wish someone could help me create my plan, help me know exactly what to do. That is exactly what we do in Classroom Management 101. So if you would like someone to walk you through this step by step, I invite you to head over to teachfortheheart.com/help, find out more about Classroom Management 101, and sign up. And we can't wait to help you step by step. We'll see everybody, though, in the next video.